Okay, with that, we're very fortunate to have some highly recognized investors in the space here with us today. We'll start with an investment panel looking at the challenges of funding startups in the homeland security, defense, and general security arena. Something that is a very different animal than the typical IT technology type startup that's more familiar in the VC world. I'm going to introduce our moderator, who's Duddy Rokach. Duddy is founder of SOSA HLS Tech, a accelerator, one of the few accelerators that focuses on this space. Previously, Duddy was head of the Combat Weapons System Division, leading R&D and procurement projects in the Israel Defense Forces. I must say that also Duddy seems to be sort of the Forrest Gump of the HLS sector. I don't think I ever meet a startup who the second thing they start talking about is Duddy Rokach. So with that, let me call up Duddy, and Duddy will introduce the rest of the panelists.
Okay, good morning. I'm more than glad to moderate this panel. I think 2 years ago, if we will try to find some people that want to invest in the homeland security and counter-terror world, it was very difficult. And today with me, there is 5 colleagues from the best sellers of the VCs and corporate. I will call everyone to come to the panel and introduce himself. I think each of you can do it better than me. So Amiram, after you. So I will invite Amiram and Yariv and Shefer and Avi and Arik. Okay. So thank you for coming and joining us to this special event. And I want each of you to spend a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, how long you've been investing in the space and why, and what are the challenges, and later on we will be more accurate about questions about the deal flow and the investment and how dealing with homeland security and counter-terror startups. So we start with you, Amiram.
Okay. Hi. My name is Amiram Levinberg. In my background, I'm an electronical engineer out of the Technion. I used to serve in the technology unit of the intelligence community here in Israel, 81, for those of you who know. Then I was the co-founder of a company called Glilot Satellite Networks. Been there for many, many years. We have established a defense division in Glilot, like 8 years ago or 9 years ago. So we came into this business. I'm out of Glilot for the last few years and co-founder of VC called JAL Networks. We invest in B2B, but also in defense technology.
Arik.
Good morning. I'm Arik Kleinstein from Glilot Capital. Glilot is an Israeli venture capital fund focused on enterprise software companies. And our main focus is also on cybersecurity. We invested so far since 2011 in 9 cybersecurity companies. My background, I served in the computing unit in 9200 and also was selling lawful interception systems in the US. Before returning to Israel and starting Glilot.
My name is Avi Lindenbaum. I'm one of the co-founders of Kodem Growth Partners. We are an enterprise investment strategy investing in Israeli and U.S. Technologies. We put the strategy together to help fill a gap in helping companies that we invest in commercialize in the U.S. and Europe. Our partners include the former Defense Minister of Germany, or a former Defense Minister of Germany, as well as a few recently retired three-star generals coming out of the U.S. Army. We're a group of guys that have operating backgrounds, sales, business development backgrounds, and finance. And we have some holdings in Israel and looking to grow those. My background is on business strategy and go-to-market, and I'm complemented by my partners who have high-level contacts with the buyers that many Israeli companies will seek to tap.
Good morning. My name is Shefer Meltzer. I'm the chief scientist of Rafael. Obviously, I'm not for the VC's side here this morning, but Rafael started, I think, with the most famous case of given imaging to invest in a startup company that actually really succeeded, and since then Rafael invests in a lot of companies, but in the last couple of years, Rafael actually collaborate with startup companies, and it's a different model than given imaging case. I think we'll talk about it later.
Hello, everybody. My name is Yariv Alroy. Actually, my background is from the medical field. I was the CEO of SHL, which has a branch in Israel called Shachal. Maybe some of you know this company. SHL has developed technologies and provided healthcare services in Israel, US, Germany, and other places in the world. And I was the CEO of this company until 3 years ago. When I left, I started my third career, and I'm here because I invested in a company called Duke Robotics, the company that actually was the winner of the 2016 conference. And as a result of that, I'm here.
Actually, we compete together and you win. That was the second one. So let's start before the questions. If you can elaborate a bit what you saw before about the entrepreneurs that we saw here and here, and anything you especially like, something you were surprised. So let's start with Arik.
Well, I met a few of the companies that presented here before in different occasions. Not surprisingly, only one of them raised money from an Israeli venture capital fund, like the traditional kind of investors that we see backing up startups, and that was DID, which is, I would say, probably they got funded not because it's the typical company that is seeking to sell into the government markets, but they also have a lot of corporate use, because many corporations are actually will hopefully use this kind of technology to protect their workforce against identity theft and all kinds of related attacks. We've seen many companies around the drone or next generation drone technologies, which is obviously an area that has a lot of commercial, like civilian commercial applications, not just the military or anti-terror. That's an interesting field that got funded by a few Israeli VCs, including the big ones and also some corporate VCs. But in general, and I guess that we'll talk about it a bit later, this is not a typical area where I would say the mainstream Israeli funds are looking to invest.
Okay, Avi? Feedback about the entrepreneurs that we just heard before.
So some great presentations. I think everybody did a fantastic job. Personally, as putting my investor hat on and taking off any, not viewing through a technical lens, I'd like to see a bit more discussion about the benefits of the features in the presentations. I think it'd be helpful to better understand what the technology will provide the end user by way of time saving, et cetera, spelling that out. And I think that there's a lot of value in each of those companies, and a few words about how to go to market, I think, would have been beneficial as well.
Great, we'll speak about it later. Shefer, something that's relevant to Rafael world?
A few companies are relevant to Rafael, and we are already in contact with some of them, and actually some of them we really ran some experiments together. I think that there is no surprise in the fields that we saw the autonomous vehicles or autonomous AI platforms, and this is what we'll see, I would say, for the next generation. It's going deeper and deeper. And there is another thing that I think it's very, very important for the companies. It's the dual use, because the defense market is not so big. And you can't really base the company only on defense technology. Maybe a little bit more on the HLS, but you definitely need the civilian market and technologies that will be able to also to work for the medical, for instance, medical fields. It's going to be a benefit of the company, because otherwise they'll need more and more money from outside to keep the company go on.
Yariv, did you find the second choice for investment after Duke?
I would say the following. First of all, I don't have a lot of experience in this field, so I'm a new guy in town. For me, Cardioscale is, of course, a company that I can understand very easily, and we shall talk about it probably following this conference. Regarding the other companies, we need to drill down into these companies.
Amiram?
Not very surprisingly, maybe, all these presentations, I think they were well prepared. Probably we have prepared them, or Gideon, or someone, so I like the way that they have presented themselves. But, as I've said, not very surprisingly, they didn't talk too much about potential of the market with numbers and things like that, due to the stage of these companies. And I know a few of the companies here, and a few of them are new to me, and I like quite many of them. A few of my colleagues have raised the issue of dual use, like the commercial use and defense use. On one hand, it's great because it kind of enlarges the market for these companies. And on the other hand, when you're a small company, you have to focus. How could you focus on two very, very different businesses? A dilemma for the audience.
Okay, so now I will start with questions about the deal flow, the VC process, and other issues that related to this world. And we start with you, Amiram, this morning. And I want to ask you about what are the pros and cons of the Homeland Security and Defense Technology space from the investor perspective.
Okay, well, the pros, I think, number one pro, at least from my perspective, being an Israeli, it's very easy to like what these companies are doing, because we are all close to the defense here and defense service, and members of our family are serving. So emotionally, I think we are immediately attached. Other than that, it's very easy to find very experienced people, experienced both from a technology standpoint and from an operational standpoint, very important. Unfortunately, from our perspective, we get the chance to use these technologies in the battlefield. So Israel is a very good place of how to find ideas, technologies that are dealing with this subject. On the con side, if you look at the situation, you have to sell to governments or governmental organizations, which is tough, certainly for a small company. B, you need to have a presence in the US. So the reason we have this forum with CTTSO is that basically if you want to be active in this market, you need to find your place in the US. This is tougher, take longer time, and for a small startup, it is not easy. And the ecosystem, even in the US, is not very big, which means it's not very easy to raise money for these companies, even in the US. So not an easy task and a longer journey, longer than we VCs usually like to see. So we like to have like a fairly quick rounds. This is not for a very quick round.
Okay, Arik, you just told us that there is a problem to find VCs in the area of homeland security and counter-terror. So do you think there will be a change on what do we need to do, all the partners of this ecosystem, to make the change that VCs will take part of raising innovation in counter-terror and homeland security, because actually, and unfortunately, we are the best in this area.
And, I think that VCs are out there to make money for their investors. And the reason that they are necessarily very happy to invest in these areas is not because they don't want to make money, is because it's difficult to make money in these areas. And I think that my friends here talked about all the reasons that small markets, G2, selling to governments and all of this. I think that there is a big potential and there is a good history of looking at companies like NICE, like Converse/Variant, and other successful big technology companies that were actually started by taking technologies that were, the founders actually developed similar technologies while they were serving in the military, and then starting actually by going maybe as the first wave to some defense-related customers, but really what they were looking for is how to expand into the commercial market. So you basically go, and I'm looking at Converse, which we all know, at least it used to be a very big success stories in the 90s and in the previous decade. Founders that came from 80 to 100 were developing the first digital recording systems for military applications, and that was like, it sounds trivial today, but in the beginning of the 90s it was very advanced technology. And the first customers are actually SIGINT organizations, not just in Israel, but also globally. But then very quickly the technology was converted to be used by mobile operators, and it was great timing, and that's how we got a company that was selling $1 billion a year at the good times, like about 15 years ago. So I think that VCs will look at the homeland security market as small and difficult to penetrate. They will look at founders that are coming with a deep technology, and I think that my friend here is a great example, because also the founders of Glilot came with strong experience in satellite telecom, and this is what is really interesting for the VC community here. That leaves the entrepreneurs that want to focus on the traditional government markets with difficulties to raise money, and we know that. And I think that there is an alternative ecosystem that knows how to fund and how to work with these kind of companies like the ones that you are trying to develop here, but also many grants that are given by governments, and not just necessarily the Israeli or the American government, but we know about European programs, there are Asian programs. And you just need to be very, very focused and not burn a lot of money, because most likely also the exit opportunities, if it's either going to be Rafael or Elbit, or maybe the IAI buying you, we didn't see too many big exits happening in this area, which means that if you want to return good returns to your investors, you better not raise too much money, keep a very efficient development effort, and launch it to the market as efficient as fast as possible.
Okay, thank you. Avi, I want to ask you about when you do consider to invest in the homeland security and defense startups, and what do you primarily look for?
It's a number of data points and signals that we're looking for. Table stakes, using the sort of the poker term, would be very strong and unique IP. But beyond that, how is that technology being applied? We like to see different approaches and thoughtful uses, and management. Management that not only has a very strong handle on their technology and product, but understands where they fit in the ecosystem. How do they partner? Who is their product valuable to for distribution? How will they protect themselves and create moats? We like confidence, but not arrogance. Arrogance is a bit of a non-starter. And then, for the team to say, here's where our gaps are. We don't understand these three things. We're looking to prove them out. So a lot of this does hinge on the jockey, so to speak. But we look to go into a deal with an exit in mind. In the U.S., a company is not going to be interesting for purchase by Lockheed or Northrop unless it's a $100 million business, at least. That's very difficult for an Israeli company to get to. So we've touched on dual use. If there is a dual use situation, that goes in the plus column. But as a short answer, we look for a combination of data points that gets us to say yes.
Okay. Now I want to shift a little bit from between the VC point of view and the corporate. I can tell you that last week I was in the Eurosatory exhibition in Paris. A lot of the biggest corporates in the world, but I was more than surprised to see Eurolab, a new version of Eurosatory. They brought 100 startups from Europe to pitch. Every 3 hours there were eight startups that pitch. And actually, the corporates are more than interested to cooperate with the startups because they analyzed there's a huge gap in finding solution in short term or in low cost solutions. That's what's the idea. And from this point, I want to go to Shefer that represents something like corporate VC. Ask you what market areas and customer needs are or will be the hot potato for startups, and what areas do you think startups should be looking at today when trying to approach Rafael?
First of all, I think the subjects that we saw in the morning session, these are the subjects that we're going to see, and this is what will influence the defense market, definitely. There is no surprise in this. And just because of the fact what Amiram just raised a few minutes ago, I think you can't really focus on two sides or two projects or two prototypes. And therefore, I think the companies, I think it's going to be better if they'll focus on the market that where the big money is, because otherwise, if you have the money to run for a few years with initial results and some experiments, that's fine. But if not, if you're running out of money, so I would invest in the commercial side and to see where the dual use is. And I think the corporates and Mafat and the other agencies are here in order to help with taking this prototype, first of all, showing experiments that it's working, and I think the corporates they have the experience in the defense and in the HLS market, how to take the prototype and go all the way to the product. So I really think just because of the issues that were raised here, I would say, or if it was in the case of my son, I would say go to the commercial market, try to focus over there, and figure out how to move the technologies in the cases that already raised here, and move them, because the commercial market is already running, and the defense market is a little bit behind. And I think it's a phenomena that we can see for the last, I would say 15 to 20 years. The commercial market is running and the defense behind. And what we'll have to do is to look for the technologies that are running fast for the commercial market and try to harness them to the defense applications.
Okay, Amiram, if you can elaborate a little bit more because of your background in the corporates, what do you think should be the right way for startup to engage corporate and to work with? And from the other side, the non-invented here problem of the corporate, you know, the R&D organization inside the corporates that really don't want the startups go inside.
Well, at least my experience is that in the commercial world where I lived in most of my business life, if you like, it's much easier in the sense that companies acknowledge the fact that they need to rely on smaller companies to accelerate development of a few elements in their product. When it comes to the defense market, actually it is tougher. And the reason is that the big guys are really big, and the small guys are very small. I mean, the startups that you see here. So the proportion between the big company and the small company is quite huge. And the defense integrators are very used to do lots of things in-house. And the NIH syndrome is actually stronger there, at least based on my experience. So it is tougher. Specifically, I can say for Sheffer, we just talked now, that Rafael has a fairly open attitude. I mean, they wish the industry to come and cooperate with Rafael. It's still not easy, just due to the difference in size. So it's a tough mission everywhere.
So I think, Yariv, I in the beginning, I thought to ask you about something else, but you have a good experience from the last month dealing with your startups and the corporate and actually with the US market, because the customer in your process now is the CTTSO. So can you tell us a little bit about the experience taking startups, dealing with one of the biggest corporates in Israel, working together, the culture, the regulation of the big companies?
I would say the following. First of all, I think that there is, again, no surprise here. It's not easy to cooperate with big elephants. Elephants are not flexible, and they have their own ways, and you need to find your way in a very problematic arena. So, but I don't think that there are too many options in the defense arena. There is only one market, which is the US. China is not open. Russia is not open. Germany is a different market. So immediately you have to find your way in the US. So our first decision was, and I believe that it was the most important one, is to move the headquarters to the US. It is not an easy one because it is, you know, it's about expenses, but it is important to do it. And then you need some luck and all the other elements that all startups have to achieve.
Okay, and now I'll get to the angel point of view to ask you what makes an angel to invest in this very difficult ecosystem of homeland security. Why did you do your first investment in homeland security startup company?
Well, it's not a very well-educated process. I'm about to be 60, so I wanted to be young again. You can meet young people here. You know, during the last 30 years, I dealt with medical technologies and healthcare services. I saw most of the time patients. So it's a bit different. But seriously, I saw in Duke very advanced robotic technology. And this was the first and the most important issue for me, because I know that the medical field is going towards robots that will provide healthcare services. And this is how it started.
Okay. Avi, what do you think of the role of the U.S. and the Israeli government in encouraging startup in this space?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the government on both sides should look to the ecosystem and position themselves as an enabler. And not to say it's not happening, it is happening. It's happening in the US with DIUX, the experimental unit set up by Defense Secretary Ash Carter. I think in Israel, Mafat does an exemplary job at nurturing startups, giving them grants so they can field test, prove things out, and then sort of get out of the way. It does happen in the US as well. I would like to see, and if there are any Americans here, as a US taxpayer, I'd like to see less heavy-handedness with the startups around IP. I think the shift to OTA, other transaction agreements, which is basically a fast pathway to get important technologies, capital, cash, to field tests and then go to market is excellent. We need to be doing more of that in the US. So I think that's a very good start. I think that I'd also like to see more US dollars flowing to Israeli startups in this regard, frankly. You give an Israeli company $350,000 and you won't believe what you get back out of it, versus you can spend $18 billion with some of the US primes, get nothing. So the takeaway would be government as an enabler, but help follow through. I think the big governments need to not just give some capital, but also help the small guys partner up and team with the defense contractors for execution, because the little guys cannot serve the big DoD customers. So I think there's some of that too.
Okay, we are a little bit short in time, so I want each of you to declare you, if we need to invest in one of the entrepreneurs that we saw just now, who is the one that you know? So, and we will declare it at the end of this competition with another prize. But Yariv, let's start with you. 1 from 10. It's not so difficult.
Look, I want to see who is close to to actual revenues. That's the most important thing for me, because I'm not the one who is looking for exit. This is not the mission. I don't have any investors to report to. So I want to see revenues relatively quickly. That's the most important thing. So I need to discuss with the guys, where are they?
Shefer, do you think?
I would say it depends on the point of view, because I mentioned basically 2 point of views. We're not investing in medical applications, only through RDC or whatever, but in the case of given imaging. But I would say that there are few that are more from our field that we can work together. So the robotics, the sleeve, and the other companies from the drones technology, I think, are the companies that we can think of working together.
Avi?
So we're looking for very big market opportunities. So two standouts for me were First Point and CPO. I think new approaches, not an overly crowded space, certainly in CPO's standpoint. So we're looking for the big markets and the hill that's less crowded.
Arik?
I'm a bit biased, but I'll go probably for DID. I met them, great team, and as I said before, it's a kind of a dual-use technology, which I think has a lot of potential.
I think I like IBEX. No, I'm not familiar with them. I just listened to their presentation for the first time here. They suffer from the difficulty of actually same technology going to very, very far away markets. But if, as Yariv said, if they could come to revenues fast enough, and it's operational, then I like them.
Thank you. So for the end, I want to thank all of you for participating in this panel, but more than this, to be a part of the new ecosystem, the trying to build the community of homeland security and counter-terror startups. Thank you very much.